So for me, as I walk through a space, I'm being told continue walking 100 meters, 80 meters, 60 meters, and so forth. That's so unbelievably reassuring to hear that distance counting down. It affirms that you're heading in the correct direction. It confirms that everything's as it should be.
Hello and welcome to Spatial Experience Design. My name is Søren Vase. I'm your host as always. And today I'm talking to Neil Barnfather from GoodMaps. This is the episode if you want to know anything about accessibility in mapping. We are talking to Neil and what their team has created and how they'll take accessibility to a whole new level. And then we'll touch on a new legislation that is happening later this year that makes accessibility a requirement in your digital maps. So come along. Hey Neil, and welcome to Spatial Experience Design.
Hey, Søren, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I think we're going to have a really awesome conversation, Neil, because there are some big things coming up. And we have some legislation in here. We have some really detailed things about wayfinding and how do you get around. And I think that a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about here is really going to set the scene for a lot of people of what is navigation? How do we create experiences that lays beyond the traditional way of finding things and moving about and stuff like that? So before I'm getting too exciting and going into a lot, I actually just want like you to outline like GoodMaps. What is it exactly that you guys are doing and this technology that you are providing? What problems does that
Absolutely. Yeah,
actually solve?
sure. Yeah, let's just give a brief overview. So GoodMaps is an indoor navigation technology platform that was born from the American Printing House for the Blind with a very simple mission. How do we help someone who's blind or low vision navigate indoors? So if we think about traditional outdoor GPS products, they get you maybe to the building, possibly the door, but none of us are looking for those things. We want something inside, whether that's the gate at the airport, the platform at the train station, the seat at the stadium, or the particular store in the mall. That's what people are wanting. So the difficulty is if you can't see, if you're blind, as I am, you can't physically look at traditional wayfinding options. So whether that's signage, whether that's going up to an information desk, whether that's asking for directions, and we're all used to sort of, oh yeah, it's over there. That doesn't work for a blind person. You can't look at the signage, you can't find the desk, and when someone says, oh, it's over there, which way did they even point? Let alone what does that mean? So American Printing House for the Blind wanted to solve this problem using technology because it serves as such a huge barrier, whether it's healthcare inequalities, whether it's access to employment opportunities, advancements through education, the list just goes on and on and on. How can we level the playing field? How can we bring true equality to our indoor spaces globally? And it's a major problem if you think about not just what I've articulated, but technology until very recently hasn't solved for this. So if you look at Bluetooth beacons, Wi-Fi fingerprinting technologies, and so many other options that exist for positioning a user, they have huge inaccuracies and a massive amount of flexibility based on how congested the airwaves are, the bandwidth allocations, and so forth. So the goal and the task to solve was absolutely astronomical, and GoodMaps was founded to solve that. I will say on three key strands, and then let's then maybe throw it around a bit. But number one, it had to be accurate enough to guide a blind person, and I say it very easily, but that is a fundamentally enormous task. If you sort of think about it, what is required to help guide a blind person around in a space autonomously? That's huge. Number two, it needed to be sustainable. When we talk about sustainable, we often think about plastics and circuit boards going into beacons and all those other things, and copper wiring and all of that sort of good stuff, batteries and beacons and so forth. But it also can be the empathy to the environment. So there's a lot of buildings in the world that can't just have beacons plastered all around them and other things done to the environment that might aesthetically change them. And number three, it needed to be scalable. They wanted a solution that was ubiquitous, that provided continuity. Too far often, disabled people are given a solution in building A that is then not replicated in building B where they end up. And of course, the human nature when it comes to going somewhere is you begin and you end. And there could be a whole load of intermediary steps. And blind folks needed something that was consistent between those steps. Otherwise, it wouldn't mean anything. So those were the three fundamental criteria that were involved: accuracy, sustainability, and scalability. And the evolution that Good Maps has been on with those three foundational blocks is truly revolutionary and something that I'm truly proud to be part of.
So give me some more details on accuracy. Like, what does that really mean? Because
Yeah.
I have a hard time. Like, I can only imagine it so far, but I have never been in a situation that you are, and trying to navigate a space without having my visuals in place. So,
Yeah.
what is accuracy? How does that look?
So if you imagine, go back to my sort of idea of, we've got wayfinding signage, but you can't see this. So the accuracy at that point is 0%. Finding the desk and so forth. It's, you might be able to acoustically hear where it is, but it's still problematic to aim at those things. And then that whole sort of, it's over there. So accuracy really refers to a whole bunch of things, and you need to almost go back to basics. How do people currently wayfind indoors? And some of this is applicable outdoors, but we'll keep with the theme of indoors for this conversation. But you've got signage, you've got visual maps. So, whether they're printed on a piece of paper and someone hands it to you at the desk, whether they're on a wall, on a sign, whether they're part of a digital platform, maybe in an app or what have you. A map is a map. Everyone's familiar with that. And some maps are just purely the map. Some are a map which has positioning technology built in. So maybe it's using something in the environment, Bluetooth beacons, Wi-Fi fingerprinting, and so forth, which will allow for the map to digitally augment where it believes you to be. And then beyond those things, we start looking at things like directions. So directions is someone standing in an environment, maybe at an information desk, or doing that whole it's over there, and they're giving you a list, they're giving you a series of steps. And a lot of digital platforms do this as well. They'll tell you, okay, I know where you are because you've told me, or I've approximately localized where you are. And what you need to do is go 300 meters, down this corridor. When you pass X location, you need to make a left. And it's a series of instructions. So directions are effectively instructions. They're nothing more. Accuracy in the good maps world refers to the next level above that. And for this, you need to imagine what happens in the outdoor world. So if you're driving in your car, the car sat nav corrects for any inaccuracies, any errors. If you slow down, it doesn't prompt you until you get to the next thing you need to do. So you'll be hearing, drive so many kilometers. Okay, you're approaching in 1 kilometer the left turn. And if you stop the car at that point, nothing else happens until you get to the turning, and then it tells you to turn. So this is the next level above directions, is the ability to navigate with turn by turn real time prompts. And accuracy in the good maps world much more means this: the ability to provide turn by turn, real time informational prompts that allow an end user to navigate the space with that safety net. So it's telling you you are at the point of turning, you need to make the turn. It's affirmative in that you made the turn successfully and you went the way we wanted you to go. So we told you to go left and you made a left turn, you didn't go right. Um, and so accuracy means the delivery method, it means how we communicate to you. And if you go back these sort of the layers, like I was articulating, a map's at the very base level of that. A map doesn't tell you to do anything. Directions tell you to do something, but rely on you comprehending and you following them to the letter. Turn by turn real time navigation is something altogether different. It's something that's actually reactive and responsive to what you're doing. And then in a good maps world, we also refer to accuracy as there's no point in telling me, yeah, keep going, 20 more meters, turn left. If the positioning, so the localization, is so far out that for a blind user, you may as well have told me I was in a different building. So um, with good maps, we determined that the optimum accuracy level for a blind user would be 1 meter, but we would accept at the beginning around 3 meters. But anything outside of 3 meters just simply wasn't good enough. Using my existing orientation and mobility skills, so that's using my cane or my guide dog, I can function in the world with 3 meters of accuracy, but 1 meter's where we want it to be. And for anyone who's watching who really understands hardware positioning technologies that exist in the world today, they'll know that aspiring to 3 meters and certainly 1 meter is never going to happen with what's out there today, particularly in real world environments. So where you've got lots and lots of people walking around with cell phones and other devices interfering with the radio band spectrum. So that's what we mean by accuracy.
All right. And when you are talking about like, yeah, how do you actually get to that 3 meter or 1 meter accuracy point then of current technologies out there has is troublesome in that regard. So I know that you guys have a very specific way of doing it that also allows to like AR on your phone and other things. Can you talk about like what is the technology behind it
Sure.
and how do
Yeah.
you gain that accuracy?
So what we use is computer vision, as opposed to relying on signals in the building to triangulate the position. So we use a computer generated model of the environment. We take a scan of the environment using LiDAR, which forms our maps. And we also use visuals that are collected during that scan to make a three-dimensional visual representation of the space, which then when the end users in the space, in the majority of cases, it will be with a smartphone, they present their camera, the rear camera on the device, to the environment. And upon doing this, we're capturing very low resolution images, which we compare to that visual model. And by doing so, we're able to determine not only where the user is, so the proverbial blue dot, but we're also able to determine which way they're facing. And that I sort of have coined this expression of blue arrow. And I think this is one of the huge differences between traditional approaches to this. Not only do we know where you are with a huge degree of accuracy, but we also know which way you're facing. And as you'll appreciate, knowing where the person is and which way they're facing makes all the world a difference. We've all been in our cars before where we've, and the instructions of, start driving. You start driving, and within, sort of 30, 40 meters, you're told, oh, make a U-turn. Because when you're stationary, the car doesn't know which way the car is facing. And that doesn't happen in our world. We know which way you're facing. So that's how we do it. We're using computer vision. The computer vision model is trained using a combination of machine learning and AI to build that representation of the space. And then as we're being fed these low resolution images from the end user's device, we're comparing them simultaneously to the entire structure. So unlike where a human being is in the space and they're sort of looking around, looking for signage and trying to ascertain where they are, we are able to compare what a human eye could see in the entire space. And we could be talking about an entire airport in an instance, which far surpasses even a sighted person's ability to determine where they are in that space.
Awesome. So there is a lot of things we could unpack here, but I think I want to start at a very high level here of saying what you're actually doing is that you're creating a map without anyone has to actually use the map in the traditional sense of how we're using maps. And that is like kind of a core what we're going through in this podcast of that spatial experience that we are creating without the traditional way of saying, hey, we need to navigate somewhere and we need to look at at we are here and we need to go through these corridors and da da da.
Hmm.
But you actually have um, different ways that you can guide people without
Correct.
showing them the map, but by step navigation.
It's correct.
And
Absolutely.
that's unlocking a different some different levels of that spatial experience that we are trying to unlock here. Because I know I've seen the quotes on your website for people who is afraid of go to the grocery store and can't figure that out because it's hard when you're blind, and your technology actually help people in doing things that most people take for granted. What is some of the stories that you can tell of, well, where you really have some success in this that unlocks a whole world for a bunch of people who never had accessibility before?
So I think the easiest thing to really begin with is, you're absolutely right that a traditional approach to this would be a two-dimensional map with that sort of blue dot idea. And it requires a huge amount of mental overload for a person. Where is it telling me I actually am? Is it accurate? Am I moving in the correct direction and so forth? What we do is we take away all of that, and we are providing that audible. In the case of a blind person, we're giving audible prompts. So for me, as I walk through a space, I'm being told continue walking 100 meters, 80 meters, 60 meters, and so forth. That's so unbelievably reassuring to hear that distance counting down. It affirms that you're heading in the correct direction. It confirms that everything's as it should be. You know, approaching a left turn, turn now. And as I make the turn, I get that confirmation that everything was correct. So for the blind end user, it's incredibly reassuring that you're going in the correct way. It's giving you audio prompts that are speaking to you. We also have the option for people who don't want to have so much chatter. There's audio in terms of tones, so we can have tones prompting. And we have a series of tones that'll indicate left, right, and so forth. Sort of think about the pulses you might receive on a smartwatch if you're navigating outside. We use haptics to help in a sort of, I sort of talk about it as this like inverted letter C. And what happens is as you're walking, if you're going the correct direction, you get zero haptic feedback. And as the person is facing the incorrect way within the C shape, they get a differing level of haptic feedback, which allows for someone perhaps who's deaf or deaf-blind to receive a physical, tactile indicator of which way they should or shouldn't be going and understand what they should be doing. Um, that can also, though, help other user groups as well. So many different people want to receive those directional prompts in different ways. Then we look to step-free routing. For most maps, step-free routing is simply, oh, okay, here's the route to the lift, here's the route to the elevator, or here's the route via the ramps rather than the steps. But that really doesn't help so much because if you think about it, the way most buildings are constructed, escalators and steps, they're very prominent. They're quite easy to see where they are because architects can place those things pretty much anywhere. But when you think about lift shafts and elevator shafts and how they have to be embedded in the structure of a building, they often have to be almost out the way because of the way they transcend the whole level of the building. So what happens is they they're not easy to find. And simply telling the person they're there and you've just got to like, oh, follow this line and it'll happen doesn't really work for a lot of people. So step free in our world will not only give you the route that allows for that, but it actually reassures you and it can, you can visually see if that's what you were looking for, how you're going to get there and where those elevators are. And it's okay, yeah, you may think you're going into almost somewhere off the beaten track in this building, but actually that is where that lift is, and you're going to manage to find that. Um, it also, you mentioned augmented reality. Absolutely, it's one of our biggest, most proud accomplishments that we've now got that augmented reality view. So again, like people are used to in the outside world, you can navigate indoors with a view of what's ahead of you on the screen of your phone. And then you have arrows that sit there prominently overlaying in that real time environment. And as you move, the arrows are sort of very subtly guiding you. So it's very much, I actually really think of it as a guide, helping you, supporting you and reassuring you. So what we have at the moment effectively is a multiples of levels and layers of how to guide someone, and the end user picks the solution that works for them, whether they're blind as I am, whether they're low vision, whether they're hearing impaired, deaf, whether they need specific levels of step-free access, whether they're neurodiverse, whether they're an anxious traveler. And when you sort of combine all of these groups, you begin to see how this solution can help anyone and everyone. Because if you design for folks that are in arguably some of the most challenged in society to move through these spaces for a whole variety of reasons, you actually empower everyone. And then that's been our focus from day one.
Nice. That is a heartwarming mission to be a part of. I can imagine. Awesome. So I know that um, I can imagine that the adoption rate of this is slower than you would like, of course, as a part of a business who is actually providing these technologies. But something is changing right now, and later this year we'll have some new legislation that's out here in Europe anyway. Tell us a bit more about what is actually happening this summer.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So, I think from an adoption point of view, just to touch on it, the difficulty is that people tend to think about wayfinding in a very sort of traditional formats. So I've got my brand new building. I've got to put signs on the wall. I've got to have some maps maybe in communal areas, and I've got to put maybe some printout maps so that people can go up to the desk in the lobby, and someone can go, "Oh, you're here." A little cross. You've got to go here, and they draw the map, and then they hand the piece of paper over. That's how we think about wayfinding traditionally at the moment. And it's how we think about it in large complex spaces as well. We might have a a digital version of the map, and it might have some rudimental positioning. The problem is none of that is accessible whatsoever. So signage, not accessible. In a holistic sense, there are people who would say, well, we can do high contrast that works for low vision users. Yes, you can. Doesn't work for a blind user, and it may cause problems for neurodiverse users. It may not be at the right height for a wheelchair user. You can have a digital map that might have the blue dots, but if the accuracy is not there, it means nothing. And if it's not screen reader compliant, so a screen reader is the product that a blind person uses to announce what's happening on a screen. So whether that's text changes, whether that's status changes, whether that's indicators on the screen visually, the screen reader announces all of that. There are plenty of digital map solutions out there that have a visual map, but they are utterly inaccessible to a holistic group of society, and specifically disabled people. So the European Accessibility Act, the EAA, comes into force in June this year, June 28th, 2025. It aligns with WCAG 2.2 standards, and really makes the benchmark case for digital accessibility. And very specifically, it stipulates that digital products must be accessible to screen readers and indeed other groups. But I think, if you get it right, if someone's going to go out there and make the effort to make it work for a screen reader, while we're there, we may as well make it work for other groups. And it's a colossal piece of legislation. It is going to be law that if you have a digital asset, be that a kiosk, a podium, a map embedded in your app, and it is not usable by someone with a screen reader, you are in breach of the law if you're operating in Europe. That is such a huge change to businesses, whether you're an airport, a museum, a railway station, a shopping mall. There is so many environments where you know, today, I can tell you, having been blind for around 19 years and, traveled around Europe unbelievably so many times, I have yet to find any other provider that offers an accessible and therefore compliant piece of technology. And, I really commend the European Commission for ratifying this and for doing it. And now what we need to do is make sure that businesses know this is coming and that what they have is not compliant.
So let's take airports as an example, because I think it can go in multiple directions. And I
Yes.
promise you've thought more about this than I have at this point. So let's take an airport. Today we have some sort of navigation. You can like go to Schiphol in Amsterdam. You can click on like see the map, and I
Yes.
don't think that there is much accessibility there. So what is your prediction here? Are they going to really go after this, make that experience for everyone using it, and of course blind people as well, way better, or are you just going to remove the map?
So it's an interesting thing. So in Europe, that is exactly what they should be doing, either making the current implementations accessible, or they should be offering parity so they can keep what they've got and introduce a secondary option, or they can effectively retire, they can deprivate what they've got and bring in an accessible option. So there are three options: keep it and make sure that that supply is accessible, provide parity, two options, or in the third option, you know get rid of what they've got in essence and bring in an accessible option. It doesn't mean you have to totally lose what you've got. You have to do one or the other. I can tell you that different regions are doing it in different ways. We're aware of certain Canadian airports where they've physically cancelled what they've got and are now saying that's not accessible. It has to be this way. So the example of places like Schiphol and places like that. I go to Amsterdam a lot on business. It's very frustrating to get there. I think there's a lot of things that will be at play, not just the legislation, but passengers with reduced mobility. So that's the sort of generic term that airports use to sort of pigeonhole all people with a disability or with access requirements. The number of people traveling with an accessibility requirement is exponentially rising. The cost of supporting disabled people in the current one size fits all, we meet, we greet, we support, we take you through the airport. Not only is it incredibly lacking in what we want, which is autonomy, but it's not compliant. It's not giving us the choice and the ability to do that independently because there's another option that they offer that's not accessible. But more importantly, you've got to think about the business model. So it doesn't matter which currency you use. There's a sort of terminology we use, whether it's called the purple pound, the purple euro, the purple dollar, doesn't matter. But it's the spending power of disabled people and their families slash acquaintances slash colleagues. And it sort of looks at it like this: if I can't find your venue, if I can't get in there and if I can't go in there, I'm not going to spend in there. And, if I'm not going, then maybe my family that's with me equally isn't going. And this multiplies up. So it's not just the spending power of the disabled person themselves, but it's the cumulative spending power. And this is really when you start looking at airports and all these restaurants and cafes and bars and other things that are within there, how do we start helping everybody, to include those who are disabled, find those, use those, enjoy those? And how do we help airports not only be compliant, but realize that providing one-to-one human support through the airport for every disabled person is vastly uneconomical? And there is a much better way that just so happens to be legally compliant. And it's like a win-win-win. I mean, how can anything I've just said not be seen as a positive?
All right. So there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen in the few months. How do you think? How's the market reacting to this? You're talking to, uh, yeah, all the different places, airports, stadiums, malls that has to provide some sort of uh, accessibility solution that they don't have today. So
Yeah.
how's the market reacting to this? Are they proactively going towards it, or are they like kind of reacting when we are getting around the data, and then they'll start looking at it because EU regulation is always mandatory at a specific point, but not upheld to like some day down the road. So how's the market reacting to this right now?
So it's a really interesting conversation. And I think the truth is there are organizations that are incredibly proactive and they know the legislation's coming. So, keeping in the airport space, I'm not going to name airports because I think, I hope that, everyone wants to do the right thing. There are ones that are coming to us and they know it's coming, and they are looking at how we can augment their current solution. They might be in a multi-year contract and they very much want to do that. That's not a problem. There are airports that are saying, hey, well, we only just a year or so ago commissioned and we're in a sort of multi-year contract. So we'll look at this in the future. And of course, there are other airports that are simply not responding, not other venues, whether it's an airport or not. Obviously, I celebrate and I applaud the ones that truly know that this is coming. The middle of the road airports, I think those venues, be they airports or otherwise, truly need to understand, whilst the law is effective from June 28th, it's been on the statute book since 2019, and it's absolutely, to your point, from 2030 onwards, you cannot escape it. But here's the problem. From June 28th, if your system was in place before then, technically speaking, you don't have to have it compliant. However, if you make any changes to that platform after June 28th, before the 2030, it has to be compliant at that point. So here's the problem. In a digital world, updates and changes happen all the time. So if you have a non-compliant product today and you're banking on the idea of saying, well, we brought it in 2024, we're not responsible in this way. Guess what? The moment your mapping provider pushes out an update after June 28th, at the point, unless you tell your mapping provider, we don't want your updates, you are at that point now operating a new version. That could be as subtle as a color change. So we're using a deep dark green to represent, whatever on the map. And it's now going to be blue. You've just changed that product. At that point, if it's not accessible under the EAA, you are effectively breaking the law. So those organizations, I think they're very grievously misunderstanding the law. And then the third group of people who are literally just not responding, not communicating about it, I would recommend that they go and have a chat with their compliance teams and really ask them to drill into the European Accessibility Act and specifically looking at maps, at navigation, at compliance. Um, it's very clear and very obvious that this is applicable.
I think that some of the things that we have covered today is also about serving the users of the spaces, of making sure that it's not only accessible to most people, but to every people. And I think we are seeing a rise in that expectation of how do we actually serve, or how do we want to be treated when we're visiting a place? How do you utilize it the best way? And I know for stadiums, there are specific areas for wheelchair users today, and there are in airports there are people that can like drive you around if you need it. So there are a lot of solutions in place, but is it really truly built for how we want it as users? And I think that's one of the big trends that I'm really discovering doing all these interviews and on this podcast, is that trend is happening more and more, that we have larger expectations than the businesses is trying to build for today, and that is slowly changing, of us actually realizing we need to look at what is the end users actually trying to accomplish and design for that problem instead. And I think that's a really good way that we are moving, and a good trend that we are seeing. So yeah, and I just think what you're saying is really affirming that.
And I think you're absolutely right. People are very much wanting to have ease, familiarity, and they want to be comfortable in our spaces. And of course, why would we, as business owners and venue owners, not want that? People who are comfortable, people who have found navigating and getting around our spaces easy, they're inclined to spend, they're inclined to repeat business, and they're inclined to reference and refer positively. In aviation, we're seeing an ever increasing trend towards the airport being part of the destination. So I don't just want to go to a country, to a city, but I'm actively choosing how I'm going to get there. Do I fly through this airport or this airport? How do I do that? So the airport and the venue is part of the consideration. And people have an ever increasing expectation. They want more choice, they want more flexibility, they want that ability to almost control in a way that suits them that interaction. And venues that just continue to say, well, it's static, it's our way, that's what we do, will begin to lose out as people begin to make choices on how do I get there? What methodology do I use? Do I fly to Paris? Do I take the Eurostar? Do I, drive and take the ferry? What do I do? What's my options? And, do I go to the game at this stadium or do I wait to see them at a different stadium? Do I watch my favorite band here or there? And all of these things, do I shop in this mall or do I shop in that mall? Why people often talk about online retailers and they say like, the rise of people online shopping is is because of X. My opinion is it's because it's so much easier. It's easier to find the thing you want quickly. But if we made retail malls and other retail environments digitalized and we made them have that ease and familiarity of going online, guess what? You got now an ability to go out, get some fresh air, engage, interact. We increase the spend of the person because now they've got incidental opportunities. If you go online and you just type in the thing you wanted and you check out and you're done, that's it. The only chance you've got of increasing their spend is, oh, by the way, people who bought this may have bought this. But if you get me in your mall, if you get me in your retail environment and you make it easy and you make it familiar and comfortable, I'm now passing thousands of other products and retail opportunities. So there's so many reasons to do this. There's so much possibility, and it's all good for everyone in a very circular fashion.
I don't think I have anything to add to that. So I think that is the perfect ending for this conversation as well. Thank you so much, Neil, for enlightening us all into what you guys are doing at GoodMap. Thanks so much for listening to Spatial Experiences. See you.